Hello and welcome to Money for Economics, episode 6. In this episode, we'll talk about policing. If you want to get in touch, my email is in the top left corner of the screen. So, some things I forgot to put in the justice episode. Those are, let's get quickly through them. Personal property, you cannot be impounded. You can't lose your real estate if you're imprisoned. The only things that the law enforcement can take away from you is really just narcotics, weapons, dangerous items, large amounts of money if that's to do with the crime or organized crime. Most of that is confiscated will be destroyed. Finally, some infractions they can be punishable uh, by spending several days in police custody. Maybe if you were fighting or got really drunk, stuff like that. Finally, monetary fines are to be abolished, and if there are damages that need to be paid to the victims, the government will do that, and the government will not take stuff from the perpetrator and redistribute it to the victim. So the new police force, it should be considered as a part of civilian government. However, it should have military ranks and a chain of command, and should be led by a general who reports to the government or to the head of state. We can generally split the new police force into two areas. The first is just field tasks, so what you expect from your average uniformed policeman, and specialist tasks. So those are more where you need more training and you use special equipment and you have different missions from field personnel. We'll talk about the disarmed police, and obviously here at the end of the slide, it says that these all personnel should be familiarized with firearms, weapons. They should be trained in the military arts, in military leadership, hand-to-hand combat, disarmament. So if they're gonna be field officers, are gonna be disarmed and doing their work disarmed. They should know hand-to-hand combat and disarmament to protect themselves from anyone who is armed. So the disarmed police, basically firearms officers, they're a separate sort of class in itself in the police force, and they realistically they don't need to make up more than 5 or 10% of the entire police personnel. So your average policeman, he's not armed with firearms. They respond to calls regularly, so they intervene by car. So call is put to the through through telephone, and then the police station dispatches specific cars to respond to those calls. But so your average policeman, they're not armed with firearms. I think this is a very important topic because I think giving firearms to all policemen is a bit it's a bit irresponsible in a way. It can be abused in many ways. Um, Special units for such as for counterinsurgency, they can be armed with military grade weapons and they can be barracked. So whereas your average policeman isn't barracked, some of these special units can be barracked. Disarm police, it depends. The success of the disarmament of police really depends on if there's firearms in the country, if gangs have firearms, and if they don't, then there's no need for police officers to carry pistols. Second main thing, if the borders don't work, right, so the problems are just gonna accumulate. You can catch a massive drug dealer, but then, in a certain period of time, if your border doesn't work, that what you all those drugs that you captured are going to be replaced by other drugs. So we need to have a working border, and I think that is one of the most important points of having a safe country. Obviously, immigrants shouldn't be considered unwanted. Um, there's a lot of talk about improving border security to stop migrants coming in, but I think that's not parallel in any way to stopping drugs, weapons, counterfeit money, human trafficking from crossing borders. So this is a list of these capabilities. Helicopters are probably very important to move personnel around the country. Airspace policing, jets fleet, and transport aircraft. These are missions that were inherited from armed forces when they're disbanded. But obviously, you have to think about the infrastructure there. You need to have pilot schools. You need to have training jets. You need to have things like that. So personal equipment should include military grade uniforms and body armor. And you can read what's on this slide, and I'll just go to the next one. Field and specialist units. So those are two types of units, two types of sort of units and classes of officers. Field units are fully uniformed. They don't carry firearms and are intended to respond to calls. And then you have these sort of different other specialist units that are written down here. Combat divers, parachutists. Is there need for a Praetorian Guard? I think that the head of state, if he feels that he can achieve some things with a Praetorian Guard that might be harder to do by the police itself, then I think there should be a Praetorian Guard. So obviously in Italy you have the Carabinieri or the Carabiniers. They have parachutist units. They have tank units, and obviously, yeah. So we can consider these sort of military style units and see if they help to resolve certain police work. Basic training camps and officer schools. They can, yeah. So there should be schools for different. So for regular officers, for actually officers in military terms, like a captain or something like that. Yeah. So there should be these schools. So it's one another thing to consider. Uh, The hardest and most important task, I think, the ending human trafficking and resolving kidnap situations. So that's pretty much the most important task. You have to consider that there's these really highest tier special units. It has to be able to respond to terrorist attacks and rescue hostages. These units sometimes are prestigious. You know, people they watch war movies and they automatically want to become paratroopers or they want to become like like hostage rescue stuff like that. What separates these high tier special units is that they have better equipment. They get more and better training. They know better techniques and stuff like that. So these are parts that didn't come into that weren't in the that didn't get their own slides in this presentation. I don't really think I need to say much more. You can pause it and read these. So, thank you for watching.